Hi, this is a video tutorial on the use of the latest version of the Management Effectiveness Tracking Tool, or METT-4, which is available as an Excel file. So there is also a guidance document on the METT-4, which you can read, and that'll give you guidance on actually completing the METT in terms of the meaning of each of the questions and how to assign scores and so on. This tutorial will focus on the use of the Excel file itself. So I'll just go and open that Excel file, and then we'll start going through the tutorial. To open the METT, when it opens on this page, you'll get either one or two security warnings, perhaps one asking to allow you to edit the file, and also a security warning around macros. You need to enable that file for the Excel tool to work. And on the front page, the first thing you should do is fill in these details. So your country, name of the park, we'll call this my park, and the year, all as one word, and then your name. And then over on the right-hand side, we've got some navigation buttons. You want to go first to save. You'll see this will bring up a dialog box, and it's taken the data from the site name and year and made the file name. I'm just going to save that on the desktop. Okay, and so then the next thing you want to do, because we want to keep this master file as a blank file for use for other sites, we close this and don't save it. And then we can open this master file again. You can see all the details are still there. If you want to get the guidance about the use of the METT, you can go to this tab. So this is a series of best practices. These are also in the guidance document that I showed you about, so I won't go through those now. The other tabs then are to the dashboard. That'll be empty at the moment of any data because we haven't filled it out yet. And then this protected area attributes, which is the first of the assessment fields to complete. So let's go there. And here we've got two columns where you can enter data, your answer to the questions and notes. In some cases, you're asked for specific information, additional information in notes, but it's also available for you to make any notes about the answers that will be useful for future reference. So again, we'll just fill in the country and the location, in this case in Queensland. The name, we called it my park. The WDPA site code, there's guidance on where to find that. So I'm not going to go through the details of what these things require at this stage. Year of establishment, so 1958, let's say. And here any national designation. So it's called a national park. And the protected area category. So these are the first of the drop-down boxes. And here you can select the category from the drop-down box. This one only allows you to select a single category, but if there is more than one category that applies, let's say it also contains a wilderness area and perhaps a wildlife management area. Sorry, let's make sure we select that. You can select more than one in this field. Is there an international designation? So let's say, yes, it's a World Heritage Site. And we answer that. And then again, we've got a multiple select drop-down box where you can give the criteria that it's listed under, and you just select them one at a time till you've got all of the ones that apply. I won't go through and fill all of these out now. It asks whether it's a Ramsar site, a biosphere reserve, and has it got any other designations like an ASEAN Heritage Site. Here for sites of particular importance for biodiversity, again, you can select multiple criteria. Governance details, you can select from the drop-down box. So in this case, let's say it's a co-managed site and it's managed by National Parks and Wildlife Service. We put in the area in square kilometres. Does it have staff? Yes, it does. If you have that, when we then ask for the number of permanent staff and any temporary staff that might be employed, the available budget, and here you should give the currency. So in this case, it's Australian dollars. And if you can, split that up into recurrent and supplementary funds like special project funds. The number of visitors, either an accurate number or if not an estimate, and the year. So maybe this was from 2019, the last previous full year. The next one is about the values, and you're asked to give them up to 5 main values. If you want guidance, you can select that guidance link, and that will take you to some guidance about identifying different values, and you can go back and fill these in. So we will just fill in some different things in here. We can give it a range of those values. You're then asked to give the main ecosystem services, and these are selected from a drop-down list. So maybe climate mitigation, and perhaps, oops, all right. You need to select that, click outside the box to select that. So I'll go back and click this. Oh, sorry, it's the repeat of the one I had before. The other one I was putting in was this one. Okay, we've selected those sites. You can give others. You're asked to give the key management objectives. So this might be if I can spell properly. Okay, and then you're asked to put in some details about the completion of the assessment itself. There's a field here that sums the total number of people involved, but we're just asked to put in the number of people in different categories. Maybe there were the manager and 2 staff, perhaps some regional staff with expertise, 3 representatives from non-government organisations, 2 community representatives. That may be it, and this has summed them here. And then there's a question about whether or not the assessment was done in relation to a particular project or donor. In this case, it wasn't, so I'll just leave that blank. And then the person who's responsible for completion of the assessment, and their affiliation and email. And the date that it was carried out. So this is the 22nd of the 11th, 2020. And that completes the protected area attributes. And we can then, I'll come and talk about exporting the data later. We can then go on to the next assessment, which is the threat assessment sheet. So we click on that to take us through. And here then is a form to fill out that looks at threats to values. So the threats are all listed down the side here, broad categories of threats, and then very specific threats. And these all come from the Conservation Measures Partnership IUCN classification of threats. So we'll just go in and fill out some of these. So we've got residential and commercial development within the protected area. Let's say there is some tourism and recreation infrastructure, and we might have here, it is a expansion of the tourist resort. And here you can then have a look at this particular values that are threatened, and this picks up the data that you filled in on the previous page. So in this case, let's just say that the proposal is in an area of Nothofagus forest, and that's what's being threatened. And you're then asked to have a look at the extent of the threat. Again, look at the details in the guidelines here, but this is a drop-down list where you can pick one of 4 categories, and those categories are defined in the guidance. I'm not going to go through those. I might say this is a low threat. The severity, though, might be, medium. Let me go back and select that again. And this may come from an environmental impact assessment that details this. And the management response to that might be to negotiating a limit on the area, and you can add other notes here, whatever they may be. So I'm not going to go in and fill in all of the details of this, but you can see that for each of the threats, we can have a look at and fill in the details, the values that are there. Let me just go down and do one more. Okay, so maybe we've got one here around transportation services. Let's say it's roads, and this is upgrading. Of a transport corridor through the park. And here we can select the values, and things may impact on more than one value. So here we're able to select multiple values if they apply. And this lists all of them, and we'll bring that across. And again, we can select, let's make that low, it's only affecting a small area of the park, but the threat itself is high, and so on. And we can put in the information here from, it could be a study by logs in 2019, and the response might be maybe they need to build some wildlife flyovers and underpasses. And you can, in here and the notes, you could give the details of the reference. Etc. Okay, so you complete this for all of the threats. If a threat doesn't apply, you just leave it blank. So that completes the details of that. You can add other threats if they're not covered. Okay, so once that's completed, again, you can export the data. We'll come and look at that later. We won't go to the dashboard because there'll be relatively little filled in as yet, but we'll go to the METT-4 questions and scores. And this takes you to the main part of the management effectiveness tracking tool. The original questions in the MET are here. Some additional questions have been added. Again, there's information in the guidance documents. I'm not going to go through those, but here are the questions in order. And if you have data from a previous assessment, you're able to fill that in here. So let's say we'll fill in a few of these, and I'm not going to worry about the data. They're all scored on a 0 to 3 scale. So you could fill that in from a previous one if you have the data, but then you can go through and take it question by question. So here it is, it takes through, and these all have exactly the same structure. So we're just going to have a look at a couple of those. The first question is this question relevant to the protected area or not? If it's not relevant, you can tick this box, but then you need to explain why. So in this case, legal status would probably always be relevant, but just for illustration, let's tick it. And you should say some reason why it's not, and you need to fill that in. If you try to go back and you haven't put some data in, it'll tell you an explanation is required and take you back here to fill it in. Let's untick that for now. If it is relevant, you just ignore that, and we go down, and here's the question. Does the protected area have legal status, or is it established? There's some guidance to that. This is an abbreviated guidance compared to what's in the printed guidance document. And here are the 4 possible answers. So in this case, we'll say the protected area has been formally gazetted. So we give it, here, answer D. You're then asked to fill in the evidence and guidance. Again, if you try to go back to the next question from here, go on to the next indicator, you'll get a warning saying you have to fill in the evidence and justification. So we can say, perhaps a gazettal notice, 4539, whatever it is, 2549. And then the next one is actions required to improve management. In this case, there may be none. So you put in nil there. Again, if you try to go on to the next indicator, it will tell you that you need to put something in. If in this case you've got the higher score, then just put in nil as a record. And finally, you're asked for the information sources. So where did you get it from? In this case, it's a departmental document. You don't have to fill in the details here, but if you can, you might want to put in, we had and that ought to be in the okay, so you can give that details. We'll have a look at some other examples of that later. Once you've completed that, so you've answered all the questions, you can go to the next indicator, or you can go back to this main guidance document. So let's go back there for now and have a look. And you can see that in this case, it's given the score based on the answer that you gave. In this case, it was the maximum. And here, the maximum score that's possible is 3. And so that's completed. Let's go to another question. I'm not going to fill all of these out. I want to pick one that may not be relevant. So let's say, do commercial tour operators contribute to protected area management? Let's have a look at that. There may be no commercial tour operators in the park. If that's the case, you would tick this and you would say, no commercial tour operators. Okay, and we'll go back to this question. And here you can see that this has now adjusted the maximum score to 0, and you also have a score of 0. So that means that it's not counting against you, the fact that it's not relevant. Okay, so you can work your way through all of these questions. Just want to go and have a look at this one. Is there a management plan or equivalent? Okay, let's say we'll give it a score of 2. There is a management plan that's being partially implemented because of funding constraints or other problems. So we select that that's the case, and we can say, okay, and again, it might be departmental document and also staff experience that inform that. And we'll go to the next indicator. Now, this one also relates to the management plan, but these are the additional points. So here you score 1 point for, or 1, you tick each statement that applies. So the planning process allows for adequate opportunities, and we can say there is an established schedule and process, but maybe monitoring doesn't feed back into management. We can give the reasons for this. So we should justify that. We should say, a bit too frequent, let's say 10 years. Right, we can say, okay, so and maybe this is also a comment from external experts. So we should have this could be the art director. So on, you should fill in as much detail as you can for these. Let's go back to the METT-4 questions and scores now, and you can see here the maximum points if you had scored all 3 additional points was 3. We've only got 2 of those. Okay, so I'm not going to go through and show you all of these in detail. You work your way through these. There are some which don't contribute to the score, but which collect particular additional detail. So let's have this one in looking at a condition and trend in values. So this one, there's some guidance that's given here. We're asked to rate the condition and trend of each of the values, and you can see that the values have been copied across from that particular attributes field, and we're asked to select condition and trend for each of those values, and we need to give a justification, and it could be from and then if there are any actions, there might be nothing that we need to do there to do that. So we do this for each of the values. Again, selecting from the drop-down list. And there may be some that you don't know, you've got to fill that in and so on. So this doesn't contribute to the overall METT score, but it does help inform the next indicator, which does rate condition of value. So with the information that you have in your mind that you've completed here, you're then able to say, so some values have been partially degraded, but most values haven't been significantly impacted. Again, you need to give some responses to each of these questions. So on. Okay, so so we get a score here, but this information is completed. So that we won't go through. I'll pause and start a new recording shortly with some of this filled in to show you the next phase in terms of how the dashboard works and how we export this data. Okay, so here we are. I've filled in all of the METT-4 with just some dummy data, but just to show you how the rest of it works. So this is the METT-4 questions and scores sheet with data filled in for all of the fields. So if we have a look at the dashboard now, so this now gives you a summary of the data, gives you the score from your site compared to the maximum score, either as a radar diagram or as a chart here, a bar chart. It includes information on the threats in terms of severity and extent, again as a bar chart or as individual graphs of extent and severity across all of the threats. And it includes here the scores. This is the scores that are reflected in these graphs, but also for each of the values that you listed, the condition and trend of those values from those detailed assessment sheets that we looked at, the status and trend in key indicator species and habitats. So this can be printed as a just as a normal, through the normal print process from this. But if we go back to the METT-4 questions and scores sheet, so we've got 2 things that we can look at here. One is to where we filled in all of the actions to improve management. We can do a review of those. So that takes us to this spreadsheet. And here we've got for each of the indicators, the score and the previous score if it's available. I didn't fill that out for all of the indicators. But what it has is what information was added in the actions to improve management, here listed across in this row. And then you can go through and you can add a plan for this in terms of for each of those actions, what date it needs, you should aim to complete it by, who's responsible for it, other people that need to be engaged, if there's a budget estimate, then how much, and any other notes that you want to have. So again, this can be printed and then input into the management plan. But let's go back to the METT-4 questions and scores. The other thing that's available from each of the assessments, I'll have a look at the attributes first that we filled in. Here we can export the data. Now to export the data, you have to open the other Excel file that's provided with the package. It's called this METT-4 exported data. .XLSM. It's important that you don't rename this file. This name needs to stay the same until you've exported all of the data that you want. And you can see it has 3 tabs: affected area attributes, threat data, and assessment data. And at the moment, it's blank. So if we go back to the form we filled out, if we hit export the data, then that's all that we need to look at. If we go back to this form, we can now see that this is written across as one row in the data, all of the data from that form that was filled in with the park name. So including the date of assessment. We'll go back to the other file we looked at, the detailed assessment of threats. We can do the same thing. We can export the threat data, and for the METT-4 questions and scores, we can export the detailed assessment results just by hitting those buttons. Let's have a look at this file. We can now see that this data has been written as one row in this file. So if you have a number of assessments that have been done from different sites, or a number of assessments over different years, you can write the data to this one file that collates the data, and from there it can be moved into a relational database or other system for assessment across sites. Okay, so that completes the run through of the Excel form. This can then be, as I said, it's been saved with the park name. You still have the original file you can open to run again. Don't forget to look at the guidance in terms of how to fill that up. And hopefully this has been useful in helping you work through the METT-4 Excel file. Please email us if you've got any queries or find any problems. I would say the Excel file, apart from the fields that you need to fill in, has been locked. There is a password, and we'll share that with the coordinators. That password allows you to unlock those sheets if you want to either translate it into another language, or if you need to vary the question to meet a local circumstance. Okay, well, good luck, and we look forward to seeing some results coming in from the METT. So thanks very much for listening. Bye.